Nelson Mandela Bay is in trouble. From ailing infrastructure to officials being investigated for corruption, to record levels of unauthorized and wasteful expenditure, to unspent grant money being returned to National Treasury, every day brings a new unhappy headline. Our guest today is a man who firmly believes that all is not lost and that he can arrest and reverse this decline if he gets voted into office as mayor in November. It's an office he previously held for a few months. Retief Odendaal, how are you doing?
Hi, Daron. No, I'm doing very well, and I'm happy to be here.
Retief, first question. Can this decay that we all see around us and the neglect, can it be fixed? Can it really be fixed? And how big a job is it? How long would it take?
So I've said this probably 1,000 times, and I will never get tired of saying this. Nelson Mandela Bay is the most fixable metro in South Africa, of all the broken metros outside of the city of Cape Town. And I say that because if you look at the Gauteng metros, they are virtually bankrupt. They owe Eskom billions of rands. They are so indebted. They've got long-term debt on their books that they are struggling to repay. I see that Joburg the other day had, I think, less than 2 weeks cash on hand. So they're factually bankrupt. And they've got no cash reserves. So that means that they've got no ability to invest in their infrastructure. Now, I know that there's a lot of people that are very, very unhappy and sad over the rapid decline of Nelson Mandela Bay over the last couple of years, and as well we should be. But here's the thing. We don't owe Eskom a cent. Those Gauteng metros owes Eskom billions of rands. That money has to be repaid. We don't owe them a cent. We don't have long-term debt on our books, really, not anything significant.
Yet.
Well, yet, because we're going to get there. That's something that you want to do because you want to go and borrow money to invest in infrastructure. And we still have cash holdings. We still have relatively healthy cash reserves of about 3 billion rand. And that makes us a very unique metro. A metro that still has some money in the bank, that doesn't have a lot of debt, and therefore has the ability to invest in its infrastructure. And that is the game changer. Because many of our other metros, not just the Gauteng metros, we can also look at eThekwini and Buffalo City and others. The reality is that they are struggling with their infrastructure, like we are now starting to struggle with our infrastructure, but they've got no ability to turn that situation around. We have the ability to do that. We've got the ability to invest in our infrastructure. We still have money. We will leverage our cash reserves against applying for loan funding to invest in our infrastructure. And that's what you want. You want a city with reliable infrastructure because that attracts investment. And our biggest challenge has always been unemployment in a city with one of the highest unemployment rates in the country and one of the lowest GDP per capita. Your focus has to be on growing the economy, and you will only be able to do that if you've got sound infrastructure. And, maybe lastly on this score, I can just say that bad governments can be booted out. Inept leaders can be kicked out of government. And that has happened in the history of the world, all over the world. So I think that should fill people of Nelson Mandela Bay with a little bit of hope. And this city deserves to be saved. It's a wonderful place to live, excellent climate, good schools, good quality of life, affordable lifestyle. We've got some of the most affordable property in the country. So it's worth saving it. The only thing that's bedeviling Nelson Mandela Bay is our politics, and we can sort that out.
Your very energetic campaign has been condensed into 5 core pledges that you've made to voters. Let's run through them. Why were they chosen? The first one that you've got is making NMB safe and clean.
Okay, so the clean side, I don't really have to explain. I think we all know that our city used to be fairly clean, and today it's filthy. No matter where you go, you just see illegal dumping. There's no bylaw enforcement.
Why aren't those bylaws enforced? We know they're there.
Well, it actually links up with the safety aspect because there's just not enough boots on the ground. You're currently sitting with a Metro Police force of just about 120 Metro Police officers. By the way, those are the same number of Metro Police officers that were taken up when the force was actually established in 2016. So they haven't increased in numbers. And any given time, there's only 3 Metro Police vehicles on the road. So that's from Van Stadens to Colchester to KwaNobuhle to Mountain View in Gqeberha and Rosedale and the northern areas and the beachfront and the western suburbs, everything in between. Those 3 vehicles have to police. It's impossible. So we actually said that in order to ensure that we fix our city, we need to pay special attention to the safety aspect. Because let's be honest, no matter what your plans are to fix the administration and to deliver better service delivery, you're not going to really make any demonstrable difference unless you deal with the criminality elements. There are organized syndicates that targets our infrastructure, and it costs the municipality hundreds of millions of rands every year. It's not just the government's infrastructure that's targeted, it's also the private sector. There are property owners in the city, especially in certain commercial hubs and industrial hubs, that are really struggling to insure their properties because they are continuously hit by organized syndicates that targets their infrastructure, the copper pipes and cabling and so on. And this needs to stop. So we said we need a Metro Police force that can be reckoned with, and we can double the number crunching, and we can double that police force within the first year of taking office, with the end goal of at least having 500 Metro Police officers on the ground by the end of the 5-year term. And the aim is then to have a Metro Police team in every ward 24/7. Why? Because they need to work hand in hand with SAPS in order to be able to enforce our bylaws and to monitor what happens in communities. Where's the drug houses? What is happening at scrapyard dealers? Making sure that illegal scrapyards, I don't even know why we have illegal scrapyards. If they're not zoned correctly, close them. And but we've seen in Nelson Mandela Bay that there's just an absolute state of lawlessness. No traffic police after 10 at night. I stood up in a meeting the other night at a DA meeting, and I said to some of the people that attended, I said, there might be people in this room that go for a beer on a Friday afternoon at their local watering hole, and then they get into their car and they drive home. They do that because they know that they will get away with it.
No consequence.
But people won't do that in Cape Town. They won't do it in Joburg because they know that there's a Metro Police and Traffic Police service that actually functions. That's why there's a total state of lawlessness on our roads. A couple of years ago, people would say, listen, these taxi drivers, they've got no regard for the rules of the law. But let me tell you, if you go and watch what happens just at a 4-way stop these days, Daron, you've got taxi drivers that don't stop. You've got old wimmies and tannies that also doesn't stop. So the reality is, because there's no consequences, there is the state of lawlessness, and we are all guilty. We are all contributing to that. So we need to ensure that we've got the boots on the ground. Obviously, invest in technology, making sure that we've got CCTV, camera technology, a joint operations center where SAPS, Metro Police, and private security companies sat together and monitor in real time. And there's so much technology available. You don't have to monitor a screen anymore, or hundreds of screens. You've got AI programs that will pull up the camera on a screen where there is an accident or where somebody is being accosted. And in real time, it will be brought up and you can respond. But we have got none of that currently in Nelson Mandela Bay, and that is why our city has become more and more dangerous. So that is very important. And obviously also partnering up with neighborhood watches. I've been actually visiting neighborhood watches all across Nelson Mandela Bay. I've been trying to encourage more to be established in our communities, because that also is a game changer when communities stand up and they work hand in glove with SAPs. But there's a lot that the municipality can do in order to make our city safer.
So safe and clean. Then we want to deliver water and electricity. This is gonna speak to the hearts of many people who are watching.
Well, and I will give them the statistics, and they're going to cry. We've got 4,800 kilometers of pipeline, and the reality is there's a 64% vacancy rate in water services for engineers, plumbers, and artisans. There's literally not enough people to do the work. So unfortunately, we have not had a very progressive maintenance and repairs programs running, simply because there wasn't enough money put aside for it, but also because there's not enough people to oversee, not enough skills to oversee the work being done. So what we see now in Nelson Mandela Bay with the large-scale water outages is infrastructure collapse because of a lack of maintenance. And 3 years ago, when I was in government, our non-revenue water was standing at 40%. It has gone up by 50%, and it's now 60%. So 60% of the water that comes into the city is unaccounted for. And of course, it's just bad management. We haven't got the engineers. We haven't got executive directors. How do we fix this mess? Firstly, by making sure that we recruit professional people and engineers back into the system. And then making sure that they keep to the water services master plan, which dictates when and how infrastructure must be upgraded and refurbished and maintained over the short, medium, and long-term basis. We have to get non-revenue water down. And then, also do the basics. I mean, we've got a situation where 7,000 leaks are unattended to at the moment. And that's just pathetic service from the administration, because there's supposed to be contractors in place that can help the internal plumbers to get ahead. But some of these leaks have been going for months at end. So, it's absolutely possible to fix. We don't have a shortage of water at the moment. In fact, the majority of our dams are still overflowing.
Yeah.
And people are so angry because they're saying that, how is it possible that we can't have water in our taps, but our dams are overflowing? And that's what happens when you've got infrastructure collapse, because you don't maintain and repair your infrastructure.
Yeah, literal collapse when it came to the electricity.
Absolutely, with the pylons.
Yeah.
And there were engineers' reports that said that those were going to collapse. I think that it's well documented after the first one fell in January, I think it was. I still reached out to Mayor Babalwa Lubishe at that stage, and I said, well, look, we are sitting with a ticking time bomb. And it was it 2 or 3 weeks later, and we had a situation where another pylon collapsed. Now, that cost the city very dearly, and not just the residents that had to
bear the brunt.
Yes, bear the brunt and fill their jerry cans to be able to run their generators, and some of them lost a lot of perishables. But it's done a lot of damage to the reputation of the city, because just imagine any company wanting to invest in Nelson Mandela Bay reading that our main supply lines are collapsing. They're going to say, well, the city can't provide reliable electricity. And that's just totally unacceptable. Nobody will take that chance. So in electricity department, there's not a single engineer left. Our electricity department is running at a 1.5 billion rand loss. 1.5 billion rand. That represents...
Per annum?
Per annum, yes. That represents 42% of the total rates basket. All the rates that all the residential properties bring in and all the commercial properties, 42% of that's eaten up by the loss that the electricity department is running at. So it's totally sustainable. Can it be fixed? Yes. Make sure you bring the engineers back. Make sure that you bring the competent electricians and artisans back. And make sure that there are maintenance schedules and programs that are adhered to, and take the tough decisions when it comes to tampering with municipal infrastructure. You can turn it around. It's not rocket science.
This leads nicely into your third core pledge, attracting investment and jobs. You've already touched on that.
Well, I think very quickly, it's probably one of the most important pillars and pledges. But the reality is you have to ensure that you've got a sustainable supply of water and electricity before anybody will look
create that environment
at investing in your city. And in order to do that, you need to professionalize the administration, as I've said. And then you need to be able to, and obviously a reliable road network, and we need to start refurbishing our roads because I think there's more than 20,000 potholes outstanding.
And streetlights.
But who's counting? Yes, only 22,000 streetlights. That's half of our streetlights, more or less. But the reality is you need to be pro-business and open the door, roll out the red carpet if somebody wants to invest in your city. We have companies that are shutting their doors. We have companies that are finding it very, very difficult to trade in the current economic environment. And as a municipality with collapsing services, we're making it even more difficult for them. I have often been contacted by developers and investors saying, but Retief, how is it possible that it can take 2.5 years for a rezoning application to be completed? Thankfully, that department is probably one of the only departments that actually, does deliver, and I think they really try. But we still have instances where rezoning applications takes forever. Or let's take a three-phase electricity connection, where somebody built a warehouse not too long ago, and they had to wait for more than 3 months before the electricity connection is connected. Now, the holding cost that poor developer has to carry, because the municipality say, well, we don't have the time or capacity to give you three-phase electricity. We should be rolling out the red carpet. It's an investor. There was a serious investment in that project. Tourism, we do virtually nothing to market our city anymore. And I've mentioned earlier that we've got one of the best climates in the country, and we've got beautiful beaches, and it's really an affordable holiday destination. About 30 kilometers from city center, you've got the Big Five roaming in its natural environment. You go out to Gqeberha Bay. It is so unique and diverse in marine life. We should be attracting so many local investors. And I always laugh. I say, I'm going to market the city saying, why would you go to Cape Town for only 2 days if you can come to Nelson Mandela Bay for 14 days at the same price?
Sure.
And it really is an amazing place but nobody markets our city to local tourists, and sadly that is low-hanging fruit for us that could have been done a long time ago, and that will certainly be very, very high on my to-do list. I want to put Nelson Mandela Bay firmly on the map in terms of local tourism.
The next core pledge, and this to me looks like a tough one. I'd love to know what your plan is. You say stopping corruption. Some of that it's rooted so deep. How do you get to grips with that?
Look, I want to tell you that there are, I think, many corrupt officials in Nelson Mandela Bay, but there's also many competent, hardworking, ethical officials in Nelson Mandela Bay that just wants to do their job, And some of them have been demoralized because of the brokenness of the system, and they've almost given up. But the reality is that you need to have senior executive directors, top senior management. By the way, 8 of the 10 top executive director positions have become vacant over the last 3 financial years. And that explains why these departments are so rudderless. Every 3 months they get somebody new acting. But getting top management that is uncorruptible, that you can trust, that you performance manage, and they then have to performance manage middle management and make sure that there's no shenanigans. But at the root of our problems is supply chain in Nelson Mandela Bay, and we are number 1 for looting from the state. There's about 30 billion rand on our annual financial statements in terms of irregular expenditure. Irregular expenditure is when you circumvent supply chain processes via deviation to be able to continue with an existing contract or a so-called evergreen contract. And sadly, that has been ongoing for decades in this municipality. And it's because officials built relations with certain contractors that they don't want to let go. That's how you steal in a municipality. You don't go to a cash register and take money out of the cash register. You make sure that your buddy gets a contract.
And kicks back.
Yes, and he pays for your holiday in Plet, or pays for your kids' school fees, or that's how people steal from government. And our supply chain needs an entire overhaul. I believe that we need to get assistance from national government from National Treasury specifically, in order to look at all of our processes, because we've got ourselves into such a conundrum that sometimes people bury some of our officials in bureaucracy. And I believe that's by design, because the more chaos there is, the more bureaucracy there is, the easier it is to loot. So
there's a perception amongst people that they hear or they read about certain officials who are accused of corruption, and none of these cases seem to go anywhere. The officials stay in jobs, or they get put on leave, and they're on leave sometimes for almost 2 years at a huge cost to the taxpayer. There's a perception that there isn't consequence when it comes to this as well.
That perception is spot on. And it is because there's no political will to deal with these issues. It's just management failures. It's leadership failures. If you look at the city manager, the city manager has been on suspension, if I do my calculations correctly, for about 27 months. No, longer than 27 months, probably closer to 32 months. Sorry about that. About 2.5 years. And she earns 270,000 Rand sitting at home. She's made about 8 million Rand from the city, and spent more than half of her contract period at home doing nothing. And there's been no progress with that disciplinary process. So what is the executive councillors supposed to be doing? They are supposed to monitor performance in their departments. These are now the portfolio councillors and the executive mayor, the ones that are in charge. And they need to ensure that there's proper oversight of what's happening in their departments. And there's an absolute failure. And I think sometimes they don't understand what the job actually entails. And that is why they certainly not making movement. But you see so often that you have these disciplinaries that goes absolutely nowhere. And I can tell you, in the case of the city manager, there has been no movement, and they're nowhere close to resolving that issue. As I say, about 32 months after
she was placed on suspension.
She was placed on suspension, and now that will never happen in the private sector. Nobody will waste money to that extent, and it should be no different in the public sector. In fact, you're working with the public's money. You need to be even more careful of how you use and allow it to be spent. And this city has got many problems, and every cent wasted is cent that you can't spend on infrastructure development. But just to conclude that conversation, supply chain needs an entire overhaul. There needs to be officials headhunted to get into that department so that it can function properly, because it's the engine room of the administration. And we need to reconstitute our bid committees. We need to open some of, especially our bid adjudication committee, to the public, because where you shine sunlight,
let them see.
You eradicate corruption. And I think that is very, very important, especially also to rebuild the trust relationship between the public, the general public, and the municipality, because it's so broken. You just have to go onto the municipality's Facebook page. I mean, there's nothing nice to comment there.
Let's deviate there for a second. You're very active on social media. Their page, they appear to have blocked many residents. If you were to end up in the mayor's office, would you be unblocking these people who haven't been allowed to comment on the official Nelson Mandela Bay municipality page?
It's absolute madness. Remember that the official page is the official municipal notice board for all practical purposes. The municipality sometimes don't even advertise in local newspapers anymore. They put it on their Facebook page and out on social media, and therefore they can't block their residents. They can't block the people of Nelson Mandela Bay because that page belongs to the people of Nelson Mandela Bay, not to the municipality. Remember, the municipality is the people. The officials and politicians just a custodian of what belongs to the people. So they would all have to be unblocked. And of course, you have to make sure that every now and again you warn people that
there's no abuse,
no racism. But you can't block people for criticizing the government. That's one of the perils of being in government, that people have got the right
freedom of speech.
To criticize you. And it's always going to happen. It happens on my page as well. What has now happened is that, unfortunately, I have to answer so many of the municipalities' queries because people can't access the official page.
Well, they come to your page for the information because quite often that municipal page, in my opinion, has become a propaganda arm. It's become nothing else.
Well,
they don't allow people to comment.
We'll change it back because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be abused for political reasons. It should be a true reflection of what's happening in the administration and used for dissemination of accurate information.
Last one of your 5 core pledges. You've touched on some of this already. Improving infrastructure and housing opportunities specifically.
So infrastructure, I'm not going to spend too much time on. I've already said that, that's the only way we're going to turn our city around is if we maintain and refurbish much of our existing infrastructure and if we invest in new infrastructure. And I believe that we still have the ability to do that. The housing issue is quite close to my heart. And, this city has dismally failed in housing delivery to the poor. About 70,000 housing units, a backlog at the moment. And the city is delivering anything from a couple of hundred to about 900, maximum 1,000 units per year, which means that just with the current backlog, will take them 70 years to eradicate that. And I mean, if I have to tell that in communities, they will be devastated because you'll take their hope away. So what we need is we need to break away from this idea that RDP delivery is the only housing delivery available. So we need to use our money that we get to build RDP top structures and build quality RDP structures, not houses that collapses within 2 or 3 years and then have to be rectified. And believe me, I say that, it's logical. I say we must spend our money, but in the financial year prior to me taking over, the city sent 183 million rand back into housing top structure grants and only built 28 houses in Nelson Mandela Bay. And that whilst we've got such a big backlog. So we must build RDP houses, but that can't be our only solution. We need to ensure that we've got social housing and rental housing developments across the city in all communities, also with an aim to bring people closer to opportunities. We must have make land available so that people can build their own houses, service sites.
Is there land available?
Of course there's land available. It's the one thing we have in abundance. And we need to partner up with the private sector where we can build gap housing. Gap housing is when you can't qualify for an RDP house, but you really can't get a bond either. So you're in between. And what happens to those poor people is that they live in backyard shacks on the earth of their parents and wait for their parents to die so they can get the house. There is ample opportunity for them to access first subsidies and to acquire properties that, slots in just a little bit higher than an value higher than an RDP house. But there's been none such developments in Nelson Mandela Bay over the last 50 years.
And if you're not sending back all that unspent money to Treasury, there will be funds available.
Well, of course there will be funds available, and unfortunately, we've seen that the city has over the last 2.5 financial years sent back 1.7 billion rand, with more to come this financial year that's just ended. We just don't know how much it is, and it's blood money. That money should be going into our infrastructure. That could have built on its own if you wanted to use it for that purpose, or you could use it for that purpose, about 4,700 RDP houses, 4,700 families That's a game changer in a city like Nelson Mandela Bay. Or you could have tarred 500 kilometers of existing a road. We've got about 2,000 kilometers of tarred road in Nelson Mandela Bay. Many of it in desperate need of refurbishment. But no, we're sending the money back unspent, and we really need to put a stop to that. But the only way we're going to put a stop to that is if we get people that understand how government works.
Retief, at the heart of many of these problems that you've outlined seems to be coalition politics. There's been an instability. Is it 9 coalitions in 10 years that we've had to endure in the city? Are we heading for another one, these elections?
Well, not if I can help it. And I want to tell you why. Because if we are going to get another coalition, there's no, and the DA forms that coalition, there's no guarantee that the ANC won't be able to woo over some of the coalition partners and then form an ANC coalition. We have seen the very worst side of coalition governments, and I hope that would not be the case. That's why I'm really going from community to community every single day, convincing them that our offer to get NMB working again is the best. And I really believe that we can pull it off, because in DA strongholds, only 60% of our voters go out and vote on election day. If we can up that to about 75%, 80%, we'll have an outright DA majority in Nelson Mandela Bay. And then no other political party will remove the DA mayor. Only the electorate will be able to remove the DA mayor. So we always put the interest of our city first. So if for some other reason we miss an outright majority and we have to form a coalition, yes, then so be it. That was the will of the voters. But I can't help being skeptical, because I'm one of the mayors that's been stabbed in the back, and unfortunately we have seen that no coalition stood the test of time here in Nelson Mandela Bay. The longest one lasted just a little bit more than a year, because even in the first coalition under Mayor Athol Trollip, he had 2 coalitions when he had to bring other parties on board to be able to stay in government.
Okay, so let's say things go your way on the 4th of November, day one back in the mayor's office. What's your first order of business? Come on, you must have thought of this.
Well, I've done it before, so I know exactly. So your first port of call is the city manager's office, but asking him for a comprehensive report. I can assure you that when I'm mayor-elect, I would already ask for that report, because I would want to hit the road running, so to speak. But I know the city quite well, so I know where most of the problems are. But you need a comprehensive report detailing where all of the issues are. Taking immediate control of the finances of the city, because it is in an absolute shambles, with a collection rate of about 69%, when we should be as a metro at about 95%. Making sure that we look at the vacancies for executive directors, and there are 8 vacancies at the moment, and make sure that adverts go out as quickly as possible, and then focus on core service delivery issues. There should be no reason why streetlights can't be fixed immediately. There's 22,000 streetlights that are not working. Most of them only require bulbs. There should be no reason why there are 7,000 water leaks in the city. They should be fixed. Those are basic service delivery issues. And then, basically on the same day, first day in office, I will, out of respect, meet with the unions and ask them for a report of some of the concerns that they have. And I'll try and resolve some of them, but also have frank discussions with them over what can't be done. Because the reality is that there is also a trust deficit between the employees of the municipality and the employer. I know that because I can see in what conditions some of these officials must work. And then obviously also meet with business, probably the business chamber, and assure them that we've got a plan to turn our infrastructure around. And, the financial aspect is so important because there's no ability to charge NMB residents anymore. I've just today announced that we are going to take the municipality to court on a failed public participation process, which ended up that people were paying 29% more for electricity in certain instances, whereas the municipality promised anything between a 9 and a 12% increase. Now, that's totally unacceptable, and people just can't afford it. They can't afford their municipal bills. So there's no ability to charge people more, and therefore the municipality needs to be more efficient. We need to stop the wastage, like the 1.5 billion rand in electricity losses. We need to stop the 60% water losses, which is costing the city 1.2 billion rand every year, and stop all the lunches and the overseas trips and the advertising on absolute nonsense, which happens so often just for political purposes, and focus on our key deliverables, making sure that we market the city, making sure that we fix our infrastructure, making sure that our residents get a better quality of life, because that's why they vote for us, and that is why we oversee the management of the municipality on their behalf.